Hello and welcome to Inside Modular, the podcast of commercial modular construction, brought to you by the Modular Building Institute. With a compact footprint, variety of unit options, and seamless system management, City Multi-Variable Refrigerant Flow Zoning Systems from Mitsubishi Electric Trane HVAC US are a one-stop solution for modular projects. With efficient operation and the ability to connect to commercial ventilation equipment, third-party systems, and comprehensive control solutions, City Multi VRF can help you meet energy and performance goals on your next project. From off-site development to on-site assembly, you can trust our manufacturer-level support to guide you from system selection to design to startup, no matter the application. To learn more about our offerings, visit MitsubishiPro.com. Welcome everyone, my name is John McMullen and I'm the Marketing Director here at MBI. Today I'm talking with Claudia Granados, founder of New York advocacy firm the Carnelian Group, and Jon Hannah-Spacagna, MBI's Government Affairs Director. Claudia and Jon are here to catch us up on a very near miss for the industry in New York. Claudia and Jon, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having us, John. It's a pleasure.
So, Claudia, before we dive in, tell me about yourself and about how and why you started the Carnelian Group.
So I have been working in advocacy for about 15 years. It's been really the career that I chose after college. And what I have worked on is advocating for policies and doing a lot of coalition building. So my experience comes from working with various corporate nonprofits throughout the country. And about 2 years ago, right before COVID, actually, I decided that I wanted to go out on my own because I wanted to build some new and emerging industries that I can take more time and more in-depth to work with them so that we can educate legislators about the new technologies, industries that are upcoming, and how we're shaping the future. And when you run your own business, you can pick and choose clients that you want to work with that are innovative and develop a little bit more time with them. That's why I decided to go on my own. And I started my company last January, 2 months before the pandemic.
Oh, wow. So it's very new, very new.
Yes. Although I've been in New York State specifically, I have been lobbying up in Albany and in the city for about 7 years. Before that, I was doing work all over the country. I started my work in California, then moved to D.C. and went around the country doing political and advocacy work.
And so now, of course, you're based in New York.
Yes.
And so what's the political environment like in New York, particularly in regards to labor and construction? What are the general challenges that you face when you're advocating for a construction or labor-related issue?
You know, it's a very good question. The times have changed a great deal since I started doing this work. I want to say about 10 years ago, I was working for then Mayor Cory Booker here in the city of Newark, New Jersey. And my work was a little bit different. I was actually advocating on behalf of the city in trying to work through project labor agreements to make sure we had enough work for everybody, market rate, union work, as well as building affordable housing and transitional housing for groups that are very difficult to house, and really creating a space for everybody to coexist. So, I would say that what I have seen, the changes that I have seen are multifaceted. One is we have the changing wave of the politics around the country becoming more polarized. We have we went through a period where there was a lot of work, right? So everybody was coming to work. There was a lot of projects in play after the crash of 2008, or almost crash. And so where a lot of the labor folks were very intent on doing a lot of public work because that was the only place that they could get jobs for their members. And because we had a robust economy, everything was going well. Since the pandemic, I think part of the challenge in working with construction and labor is trying to really, again, create the space with emerging industries like modular construction to come in, do the work, and scale up, while at the same time maintaining that autonomy to be able to produce the housing or commercial buildings in a factory that oftentimes are not related in the local level, right? So a lot of the trades, want to go and push a lot of the legislators to say, well, everything has to be done locally. Well, that's not always the case. Mm-hmm. And when you have a housing crisis, the way that we do now, which is very acute here in New York and in California specifically, we have to find new models, new ways of doing business. So part of what I see the challenge is trying to make sure that the people that we're advocating to, the legislators, understand that in order for us to build and be part of the solution to build more affordable housing, transitional housing, to deal with the current crises, we have to be able to create a space for modular construction to flourish, right? And that often means, yes, that we're going to have work that is located in different states and that is done in a factory. And that's how we can do cost savings. And it doesn't mean the labor is shut out of it. So part of this is trying to position ourselves so that they understand that we're not taking their work, because in many places like New York and California, because of the union density, they will be able to still have some of the work. Gotcha. And I think that's the biggest challenge.
Gotcha. So Jon, I'm going to turn to you. What can you tell us about the specific issue that MBI has been dealing with in New York, and what is MBI trying to accomplish?
Sure, thanks, Jon. So the last 2 years in New York, Claudia has helped us fight off a bill, multiple bills that would have impacted the modular industry directly, and really a direct attack on our manufacturers that would have forced them to use union labor in their factories, regardless of where they are located, and what also would have required continuous supervision by someone that is licensed by the state of New York or the city or New York City. And it was just impossible. If those bills would have passed, it would have meant there would be no more modular building that would happen likely in New York City. And so last year we were able to get the bill to not even come up for a vote. This year it passed both houses and had very little opposition, despite the work we were doing. And through the work in the relationships that Claudia and I did, it was not brought up for a floor vote for this session. So we put it off for another year. But we also understand this has come up 2 years in a row, so it's likely going to come up again. So we're already preparing and making plans of how we can, defeat this. And also, as Claudia mentioned, work with the bill sponsors and the trades to find a happy medium that works for both of us to address the needs of the city, like affordable housing, that needs the modular industry. Claudia, if you could share, just kind of a summary of, all the phone calls and virtual Zoom meetings and conversations that we've had over the last 18 months, because it really has been a heavy lift that you and I have had to deal with the last couple of sessions to keep our industry safe. Can you just kind of provide a summary for us of all those conversations and folks we've been working with?
Absolutely, Jon. So Jon is right. I mean, often, the work is not seen by people, because a lot of this is having the relationships and really working everything that you have, phones and meetings and Zooms and texts and whatnot. And, what we had to do is once the bill got out of in the Senate specifically, they didn't even hear it. They just passed it. Then it got kicked over to the House. And so once it got kicked over to the House, they rushed it again through the Labor Committee. And I think we had a few meetings before that. So then Jon and I went very quickly to work multiple times a day, going back and forth on calls. And we were able to meet with a numerous amount of elected officials, both in committees of housing and labor for the Senate and the Assembly. We were quick to also meet with program council of the assembly, which is where all the sausage gets made. So we were able to go line by line item in the bill as it was written to say this is why it will not work, and these are all the deficiencies of this rushed legislation. We also thought that there was some legal challenges that could have come out of that. So Jon and I very quickly worked to come up with suggested language, with suggested changes to it. And so towards the end, we ended up rewriting basically the bill, which is like 90% of our language, which is really unheard of. And this was all done, as Jon just previously mentioned, within a matter of days to make sure that this bill did not go through. Because one, as Jon stated, people really don't have an understanding of what modular construction is. And so what Jon and I try to do in addition to impacting the language of the bill and having it rewritten and really preventing it from passing was to also educate these folks as to what modular construction is. And so we were doing like 2 to 3 jobs at the same time when we were doing these meetings. And the other part, what Jon and I did was work with coalition building, and that included not only the different organizations that have credibility around the state that want to build affordable housing. So those were some of our external partners, as well as working with other city organizations in the city itself and saying like how this would dramatically impact the affordability of building new homes for people that need it most. So we worked on, fired up all cylinders, and we managed to get a lot of support from external partners through coalition building and really holding a lot of meetings with people who are extraordinarily busy during the closing of the session. But we managed to get a lot of time with key players that really understood the issue and wanted to be helpful, particularly the chairs of the different housing committees in the state.
That's a great summary, Claudia, and you're right. A lot of our time was spent educating the decision makers and the bill writers of what this impact would actually be on New York City in a negative fashion. And to your point, in being able to rewrite the language of the bill, if it had passed, we were able to take most of the negativity that would have hampered our ability to even do business in New York City out of the bill. So even had it passed, even though it would have been not great for our industry, it wouldn't have been as restrictive as originally written. So that was certainly a great opportunity for us to build those relationships with the central staff that are the ones that are doing the final bill writing and deciding what bills are being heard and what are not. And we know, Claudia, as we head into and prepare for the next session, you can never wait until the session starts to be working on what's coming next. And so we have a planning meeting coming up, not only with Claudia as our representative in New York, but also with our Washington, D.C. lobbyists, as well as our California team, and specifically for New York, to talk about how we can try to build a partnership with labor and unions and with the bill sponsors to help create a better situation to address their housing needs. And part of that would also include us working with the Department of Housing to adopt the new ANSI standard of using on how to create a modular program that would be more friendly for the industry and also remove some of the barriers for our membership to be able to do business in New York and in New York City. So we're certainly looking forward to working on those things, and with the foundation we built over the last year and the relationships that Claudia and I have been able to develop, we're in a much better position in New York than we were, a year and a half ago. Would you agree, Claudia?
Absolutely, Jon. Very well said. I think the work that we have ahead of us is a lot, because what happens in New York specifically is January through June is when they are in session, the legislature's in session. That means that they are actively passing bills, dealing with the budget the first quarter of the year, and then the rest of it is legislative work. But between July and December, They are working in their home district, and they are introducing new legislation as well as going over what they're going to bring up the following year. One of the critical things that we learned, Jon and I, were we have to get in front of this again, and we have to really educate more people what modular construction is. Specifically in the city, we now have, Jon, you also asked about what was, what's the political, what's the environment now. In New York specifically, we just got through the primary, so we're going to have a new mayor come January 1st. 80% of the city council members will be brand new. Most of them have never worked in city government, state government, so they have no understanding of how the local apparatus of government. So it's going to require a lot of education, re-education, introduction, and we want to be helpful to the incoming mayor in trying to solve the housing crisis. So we see, Jon and I have talked about this at length, how we see an opportunity for the mayor to be partners with the mayors and offer solutions to the housing crisis in New York City specifically. Some of the other things, as Jon mentioned, is passing the ANSI standards is going to require a lot of legwork with the trade so that they can understand why we're passing this, so that they don't get in it, because if they're not, we need to neutralize them at minimum. At best, they should be supporters, because if we don't achieve that, then it will be very difficult in a state like New York, where labor plays such a humongous role in legislative policy making, for them to get out of the way for us to pass this. Or not get out of the way, that's, more like to understand why this is also in the interest of their industry to pass this one.
Claudia, you hit the nail on the head there as far as the relationships and being prepared for what's coming next. We're already planning here in the off session to try to conduct a factory tour with some of the members and leadership in both houses to tour one of our factories so they can actually see the process and understand it more. And then, as Claudia mentioned, having a new mayor that will come in January. One of the candidates, Claudia's already established a good relationship with. So we're proactively taking steps there to have relationships in place that will make a difference and help us have influence on things that could impact our industry. So, Claudia, appreciate all the work you've done. We're glad to have you on our side and on our team, and look forward to continued success in the months and years to come.
I appreciate it, Jon. It is really such a treat and pleasure to work with leaders like yourself to really create the space for modular construction to, as a new kid on the block, as an emerging industry, to really find a sweet spot where we can make New York State the model for what should be across the country. I'm really looking forward to all of the work ahead.
Well, Claudia, Jon, thank you so much for your time today. I hope you both can come back soon and keep us updated, hopefully during the legislative session starting in January.
Sounds great.
All right. Thanks, Jon.
All right. My name is Jon McMullen, and this has been another episode of Inside Modular, the podcast of commercial modular construction. Until next time.